Woodlands. Please help me welcome Gretchen Sheirr to the stage.
Hi, and I'm going to introduce Vanessa Richardson. So thank you all for having me. Chad, thanks for having me. So for those of you that don't know, Chad, Brad, whatever you call him. Not only is he doing his day job, but he also serves on the board for the Harris County Houston Sports Authority, so I sort of work for him as well. If you don't know, they have the bonds and they service the land that Toyota Center sits in. So thanks for being patient today. Normally when I come and do these, I bring a cute furry mascot so everybody can take pictures with, but he was committed already, and we also usually have door prizes, which I cannot pull off for today, so we'll have some fun treats at the end. And every lady in this room needs to have themselves a Vanessa, so she's available. So whether it is this Vanessa or a different Vanessa. So when Chad called yesterday in a little bit of a panic, and I run live events for a living, so nothing ever goes right, ever, and you always have to pivot for something, I called Vanessa and I was like, what are you doing tomorrow? I need your help. So
I said,
Vanessa, yeah. So Vanessa agreed to come, and we're going to sort of do a little fireside chat format, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end.
Thanks, Gretchen. I always, when I lead or do panels on women's events, first of all, I'm always inspired, but I always talk about the first couple years of my career as a sports broadcaster in an obviously male-dominated industry. I used to really feel kind of all alone, and then I started talking to some of my girlfriends that work in banking or work in medical fields, and I soon realized that a lot of the challenges that we face as women, it's not just sports broadcasting, it is so many of our different industries. So I've been inspired by Gretchen from the moment I met her, and I'm excited to get to know even more about her and for you guys to get to know her as well. Gretchen, for those that don't know, what are kind of the ins and outs of your job?
Yeah, so my role is president of business operations. So for the Rockets, so for the basketball team, I oversee everything except for the players and the coaches. So I used to say I oversee everything except for what happens on the court, but that's not actually true, because most of the stuff, if you come to any games, a lot of the things that happen on the court are entertainments when the game is not happening, and I do oversee that. So that is ticket sales, marketing, partnerships, sponsorships, community relations, branding, digital, social media, advertising, legal, finance, HR,
everything.
all of the business stuff. But I do not choose the players, and I do not choose the coaches. So all of that is handled by our general manager. And then we play in Toyota Center, and Clutch City Sports and Entertainment, which is our sister organization, owns the operating lease of Toyota Center. So we are responsible for maintaining all of the capital improvements and everything that happens in the building, as well as operating it. So we book concerts and make sure that the building stays prestige, shining star of Houston.
Your path to president, I feel like, has been really inspiring because you've worked your way up. Like, you really haven't been handed anything. What has that path been?
Yeah, so Commissioner had mentioned, so I grew up outside of Houston. I grew up in Spring. My family's from Louisiana. I was born there. I ended up going back there for college. I was always an athlete growing up, so I swam in the summers. I was a really competitive gymnast. Early on, I realized I was not making the Olympics, but I thought that I would be good enough to compete in college, and so I had this dream to be a collegiate level gymnast. And then somewhere I turned, like, as a teenage girl, I was like, I'd like to have a life and not just be in the gym all the time. So I stopped gymnastics, and then about 8 months later, I was very bored, and a friend of mine was like, you should try diving. And so I went to a pool, and I tried diving, and next thing you know, I had quit something so that I could have a life outside of sports, only to be back to 2-a-day practices, and I was able to quickly transition. I had the opportunity to go to LSU on a diving scholarship, and obviously college athletics has changed dramatically in 25 years, and very much so in the last two to 3 years. But at the time, one, it's a full-time job when you're in college and you're an athlete, and so to get an internship or to try to get a job or to try to do something to prepare yourself in the business world for after college is very difficult. And I took a live event marketing class, and we threw a pep rally for the LSU football team, and we did it in a bar. And my professor was like, "You can do this for a living. If you really like sports and you're smart in business, you should think about this." I was like, "I can throw parties in a bar for a living?"
You do
Like,
throw great parties.
I was like, sign me up for that. So to date myself, I mailed letters and sent faxes and tried to find as many email addresses as I could find for any sports team at the time. And for those of you that have been in Houston for a long time, does anyone remember the Houston Hotshots? They were a minor league indoor soccer team, and there was about 6 people in the front office. It was a really small team, but that was my first opportunity. So I got a job as a marketing representative. I did sort of anything and everything for a year. They quickly folded. The leagues were changing. It was a hard time. So I worked there for a season, and then I took a telemarketing job selling tickets and I moved to Portland, Oregon, to teams all across the country, and the Rockets were one of their clients, and then offered me a job in ticket sales in summer. Francis, what year was that? I'm like, summer of 2001. It was right after Allison. I moved right after Tropical Storm Allison. I remember that because the old arena had just flooded at the time. And so I started selling season tickets. Toyota Center, the referendum had passed, so I had been on the job for a couple of weeks. We did the groundbreaking for Toyota Center, and the company was changing drastically. So we went from being a tenant in an arena that a different company managed to building our own facility. And so that meant different revenue streams. It meant different operations. And so our company went from about 40 people to 200 people over the span of about 2 years. So some of it was being in the right place at the right time and being lucky. So as my career was growing, all of these new opportunities internally, because the company was growing, kept opening up. So they could either find someone internally or find someone externally to do the job. And very early in my career, I got the opportunity to be involved in some cool projects. We built a ticketing system that was then acquired by some other companies, is now owned by AEG. It's called Access Ticketing. And we were really primarily the main users of that. And so I created this path in ticket sales. And then every time I was ready to go do something else, usually in this industry, it means you have to go to a different team, most likely move to a different market. I was fortunate where something at the Rockets was changing, and that opportunity presented itself internally, and it was never really what I thought would happen. And then you blink and it's 23 years later, and now I'm running the team. So I keep tricking them.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you've earned every step of the way. Do you feel like because you've done so many jobs that you can relate to other young people, especially young women that are up and coming?
I still think I'm young, and then like in the intro, they were like, in 2017, she was 40 under 40. I was like, I need to start like removing in the bio, like remove that year, so people don't start doing the math. Yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful for me. In some ways, it's been challenging because I've done every job. It is hard for me to let go. So one of the challenges that I found in the last 2.5 years in this role is really stepping out of the day-to-day and stepping into, strategic leadership, planning for the future, and still holding on to stuff that I've done before. And I feel like if you have the opportunity to leave your current organization and walk into a different organization where nobody knows who you are, you can just walk into that organization and you can start over, you can forget your mistakes, you can present yourself in a different way. And when you've been there for as long as I have, it all comes with you, good, bad, or indifferent. And so it's helpful in the sense that I can get to the answer quicker because I know the different verticals really well. And at the same time, sometimes it's challenging because how I used to do it 15 years ago does not mean that that's the right way. And separating that has been an area of growth for me, is what I would call it.
Love it. What are some of the challenges you faced working your way up in sports as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think everyone in this room has faced similar challenges. I think everyone here is confident, successful, very competent, knows what they're doing and is smart. But when you walk into a room and there's 18 people and you're the only person that looks like you, right? Like whether that's, whether you're a person of color, whether you're a female, whatever that dynamic is, it's intimidating. And to pretend that it's not intimidating is, good. If it's not, that's great. But it is for me, right? It leads to, sometimes a feeling of imposter syndrome. Sometimes it feels like you overcompensate to make sure that you're heard or that your voice is there. And then in other ways, it's been beneficial because if you are smart and you are competent, like it's easier to remember. So when I would go to league meetings and I was the only head of ticketing that was a female at the time, the positive would be it's not that hard. Like nobody called me Brad because it was easy to remember my name, right? Like if you can't remember the one woman's name, right? Like they weren't going to confuse me with the 29 other men. So in that way, sometimes it could be a little bit of beneficial to stand out. But in another way, there was no grace. If you felt like you said the wrong thing or you weren't as articulate, that could also be intimidating. And then in this business, like in all businesses, whether you're a lawyer or banker or whatever it is, there's nights and weekends and there's projects that come up and you just have to do the job. But in this role, we'll host 130 ticketed events at Toyota Center, right? That's a third of my nights of the year. There's a live event that's happening at Toyota Center. So whether I physically have to be there or not, when you're running a facility that has 15 to 18,000 people in it, that is stressful, right? Their safety, their security, their enjoyment is all something that you feel. And so as a woman in this business and balancing your family and your life and other expectations of what you're supposed to be doing on top of all of those nights and weekends and pressures can get really, really hard. And when you don't have other women, there's now 4 women in the NBA that are running teams. That is the most of the major 4 leagues, which would be NHL, NBA, MLB, and NFL. So the NBA, super progressive. We have 10% running teams. But when you don't have somebody that you've seen be successful in that role, that you can say, I can do it, and it just gives you that other, like confidence and motivation and confidant that when you just need help, that you can call and know that they'll be there. That's been the biggest challenge.
You mentioned balance. As a working mom, you have 2 children. As a working mom, can you balance it, and how do you try to do that?
No. Like, there's no, I get asked that all the time, like, oh, what's work-life balance? I was like, it doesn't make sense. Sent Marshall, who is the CEO for the Dallas Mavericks, I heard her speak, and she described it really well. Like, she talks about juggling balls all the time, and most of the balls that you juggle are rubber, and some of them are glass, right? And she's like, just don't drop the glass ones. And, and at any given moment, the glass ball could be something different. It could be a meeting, it could be a project, it could be your kid's game, but like prioritize your glass balls and don't drop those. Everything else will bounce back. And I thought that was a good way to articulate it. But for me, it's just like, you just have life and you just get one of it, right? And work is part of your life if you choose that path. And so you just have to figure out what you want your life to be like, and no part of your life is ever balanced, whether it's work or personal at all. And then you just have to know at any given moment what's going to be the most important thing. And there's times where my job or something that's happening is the most important, right? And I just try to be upfront and articulate with my kids and say, I'm going to miss this. I'm not going to be able to answer the call. Your dad has your phone, dad will have his phone or Nana will have her phone, but I'm going to be here and I'm not going to be able to take your call. And I just try to, maybe that's not the best way to tell us, they're
But that's
older.
real.
Now they're almost 16, right? But it was the only way I knew how to do it. We'll find out in therapy as they get older whether or not that was the right way. But, I listened to Kate. I think Kate spoke last year about just being unapologetically yourself. And like, that's just who I am. It's how I parent. It's how I run the company. It's how I'm a spouse. It's how I'm a friend. And hopefully it's worked out pretty well.
I think I'd say it has, because your kids are great. So how have you seen opportunities evolve for women throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the commissioner was talking about his diversity council. Like, that wasn't a conversation that was happening in offices, definitely not in sports, 23 years ago when I started with the Rockets. So the fact that mainly men, so thank you for being here, right, are recognizing that diversity of thought at the table of experience is important to drive business is step one. And so that has been huge, is that people are saying, you know what, like, our offices should look and our companies should look like the communities that we serve and the clients that we have. And if you look around your table at your boardroom, at your executive team, at your staff, and it doesn't look like your community, you're probably doing something wrong. And the fact that organizations are thinking about that and making strategic decisions and creating programs and plans to make sure that they're correcting that for the future is huge. And then I use this like a diving analogy. So if you watch the Olympics, diving is on the 10-meter platform, right? Like it's way high. But that's not the only platform, right? There's a 5-meter, there's a 7.5-meter, and there's a 10-meter. So you don't just show up and start doing dives on the 10-meter platform. Like, you would die. Like, that is not a safe thing to do, right? So you learn a skill on the 5-meter and you perfect it. And then you take it up a level, and then you take it up to the next level, and you add a twist or you add a flip, and then that's what you see in the Olympics, right? And so if any organization says, hey, we need more women that are running professional sports teams, awesome. They better be on the 5-meter and they better be on the 7.5-meter so that they're ready to take up their skill in their career to a 10-meter. You can't just find someone and be like, I'm going to stick you on the 10-meter and hope that it works out. So making sure, one thing that we try to do in our organization is making sure that we have a variety of staff that is at each different level, so that when the next opportunity comes up, you have somebody that's ready to take their skill set up to the next level.
Sometimes I think women are expected to tone themselves down, especially women leaders. I don't know if any of you have experienced that, but I think it's a very real thing. One of my favorite things about you and working, with you, for you, is that you do not do that. How can women lead in an authentic way? Because I think that's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not toned down, and it's not, and but that's not everybody's authentic self, right? There are, I tell people all the time, look, if you talk to anyone that I've worked with, any clients, anyone that I've worked for, anyone that's worked for me, I think people would describe me the same way, right? I think I'm genuine. I think I'm cooperative. I think I'm collaborative. I think I can get things done. I think I do things for the right reason. I'm strategic, right? But no one's gonna be like, she's really nice and kind, right? Like, I am nice. I'm not unkind, right? But I'm not a sweet, cuddly, that's not my style, right? But I have a woman that works for me who is the kindest, sweetest, most gentle manager in the world, and it's just a different style. And man or woman, acknowledging other people's traits and skill sets, and that there's another way to do things is important. And women being bold and brash and aggressive, to get things done, is how men have always done it, but are not described as bold and brash and aggressive, right? And those are not dirty, bad words. So,
what advice do you have for women in this room in leadership roles as they continue to either evolve their career or evolve their companies?
Yeah, my advice to everyone is, one, trust yourself. Trust yourself, trust your instinct, trust your gut, trust the team that you have built around you, right? Don't apologize for any decision that you make. You may have to justify it, but I find myself sometimes saying I'm sorry, but I'm like, why'd I do that? I'm not sorry. This is the right decision,
yes.
And I have nothing to apologize for, right? And so that I got that advice very early on from one of my first bosses who was a man, and I was finding that I would do that. My apologies for the delay, blah, blah, or I'm sorry, but, and he was like, stop, remove that from your vocabulary.
I love that. That's all I have. Is there anything else you want to add as we close out our fireside chat here?
Yeah, I just, thanks. We're going to open it up to Q&As. I know that just in, we're a small company, right? We have 220 full-time employees. We have over 1,500 part-time employees that run the building through our own organization or our part-time staff. But at the end of the day, like, we're the Houston Rockets. We have the honor and the privilege of representing this region, this city, our state, our country, right? Because we are a global area. So whenever I get the opportunity to come, I'm in the Woodlands and I work downtown. So when I get the opportunity to come to a different area of town, particularly with the amount of economic growth that you guys are that you're driving in this region, I always enjoy it because we represent everyone in this room. I hope that you guys will have the opportunity to come to the arena. At the end of this, we will have a QR code because I couldn't prepare in my normal way. So please scan it, please enter. I promise you, salespeople will not harass you. But please enter your name and your contact stuff. It will give me the ability to communicate directly with you guys for a thank you. And our team is rebuilding right now. We are going to be better than we were in the past, but we are not where we've been in the future. And so sometimes we need help filling the building. And so you may or may not get free tickets if you sign up on the link. So that was my fun stuff.
All right, thanks, Gretchen. Appreciate it. Open up for our Q&A, I believe.
Yep. So we have a few minutes for Q&A, so let's take advantage of that. I think Monica's got a microphone back there, and I've got one here if you've got questions. We are open for questions. Here we go. First question right here.
Hello, my name is Tammy Glasper. I work for Air Products and Chemicals. My question is, being a woman in leadership, I find it hard to turn it off, like at the end of the day, with work just always constantly on my mind, and even thinking when I wake up, okay, what are my project works for the day? How do you manage work-life balance, not only physically, but mentally as well?
I don't. I mean, I'm working on it. I have my husband's great and is a good, reminds me often that I'm not that important and that I do not need to check my email at 3 a.m. and that nothing is, everything can wait until the next day. Someone told me that I moved my my email app off of my home screen on my phone. It's a good trick. None of it is very healthy, because when that's your option, is just to move it, it's not good. But when I don't turn it off, what I've realized is I'm responding, and it's not fair for me to put my crap on my staff or my colleagues, because just because I didn't turn it off doesn't mean that I should put pressure on them not to turn it off. So I've tried to think about them and not me, and that's helped a little bit. But I'm terrible at it.
So, Amanda Fenwick from San Jacinto College. So as a former collegiate athlete, what's your take on the NILs, the name, image, and likeness now, especially because Livy Dunn at LSU, I mean, she's the highest paid female collegiate athlete now, right? So what's your take on that?
So I think it's great. I will say I'm not an expert in the space. So what I could be saying is my own personal thought, and I could be totally wrong. It's not like anything. Everything starts from a really good place, but if improperly regulated, doesn't actually do what it was intended to do, right? And so Livy Dunn should always have been able to do what Livy Dunn is doing, right? Very rarely do you see Livy Dunn. There's the Cavender twins, right, from Miami. There's Angel Reese, also from LSU. Being able to be a social media influencer and sell products because you are talented and good, you should have always been able to do. If you were in college on a music scholarship and had the ability to have a song on the radio and sign with a record label, no one would have ever stopped you from doing that. If you were a really smart engineer and one of your awesome companies wanted to hire someone in the summer to be a really good engineer for them, but you were on an academic scholarship, no one was going to stop you from having that job. So the idea that you could prevent athletes from making money on what they are good and talented at, like, never made any sense. But it's turned into a legalized way for boosters to just pay kids to come to their school instead of something else. And so that needs to be regulated a little bit. And then my fear as a Olympic non-revenue producing sport is that because there's going to be so much pressure in these, typically male, highly watched, basketball, football, maybe a little bit baseball. There's going to be so much money going into that it's not going to do what Title IX intended it to do, which is to provide equal opportunity for women. And the sports that you're going to see male and female start to suffer will be these Olympic sports. And so I tell everybody, watch the 2024 and 2028 Olympics, because the United States does not have the same structure that a lot of other countries have, which is they have training facilities that is run by the government in order to train for the Olympics. And the United States Olympics really relies on the NCAA because of the massive amount of the athletics that are there. So if you start seeing some of these Olympic sports lose some funding because the funding is now going to pay for these other sports, I worry about the Olympic sports and those athletes getting the same opportunities that they do today. But it never made any sense that people could not make money on their God-given talent.
Good deal. Here's another question.
Hello, my name is Edie Holden, and I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own company, and congratulations to you for everything that you've accomplished. As a female being in this industry, what is a goal that you have not accomplished, and do you have a time frame for that goal as being difficult in the field that you're in?
I would like our team to win a ring while I am there. That would be really fun. My goal is to plan a parade. So I will do it with all the elected officials in the room, but I would like to be a part of planning a parade. No, I think the reason why I've been able to get to where I am in my career is because at any given point, I was just trying to do the job that I had to the best of my ability and grow our organization. And then I just woke up and had the role that I had. I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about myself and what that means. But goals for the organization and in this role, Toyota Center was built in 2003. We just celebrated 20 years, and we are looking at we talk about the basketball team being in phase 2 of our rebuild. We had a little rocky time the last couple of years. And so we're looking at what does Toyota Center look like in the future? So what's the technology for the arena? We've done some upgrades. I'd like to see that come to fruition. I was a part of the team with Houston First and a lot of great folks in the city of Houston that did the bid for Houston to win the RNC 2028 bid, which will be a huge event that comes to our city that will provide a great boost to our economy and how the arena shows the world off is going to be exciting.
Going back
Monica?
here.
Hello, Olivia Rivers with the Bridge Over Troubled Waters, way back here. Hi, first of all, thank you for paving the way for women in sports. My question is, we have heard a lot about, women and people of color breaking the glass ceilings in different businesses and corporations, creating spaces for people of color and minorities and women in these areas that were predominantly held by men. How do you break through that glass ceiling, but then also manage imposter syndrome when you are the only one in the room or the only one in the space that looks like you or has your background?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't always know I don't know the answer because I have it all the time, right? Like it's the imposter syndrome is real, and even when you feel like you're doing a great job and they're there, something will come up and it all comes flooding back. But someone gave me great advice. So I think one of the ways that I help manage through it is I have a really smart boss who's very successful in business, who's done quite well for himself. And he chose me for this role. And so when I start feeling overwhelmed or that I can't do it, it's like, well, Tillman's really smart and makes good decisions and knows how to make knows how to find competent people that are really good and successful to run his businesses. Do I really think that that would be the case? So I flip it and try to remember who has come before me, who's given me opportunities, who I have been able to learn under, and know that how much I respect them, and that helps me kind of calm those nerves and settle that imposter syndrome.
Great answer. Here, I'm not sure if this is permitted or not, but it's a question from a gentleman.
Always.
My wife is why we've been successful. Two questions. Should Matt House be fired? And Matt House, the defensive coordinator at LSU. And then second, would you consider in the second part of your life being an athletic director at LSU or another school?
That is, I don't know enough about the ins and outs of being coaches on that. However, people have scored a lot of points. Although Auburn did not, so it feels like we turned the corner there. So I originally wanted to stay in college athletics. Like at my core, I love the lessons that people learn by participating in sports at a young age. I'm a huge advocate of kids participating at any level for as long as possible. I think the teamwork, the agony of the defeat, the recognition that you're not always going to be the best, that is an important skill set that I think has been lost a bit. And so I was going to stay in college athletics. I was going to finish up at LSU. I was going to do a grad assistantship. This job in minor league sports came up, and I decided to go that path. I think I'd be very interested in doing kind of a crossover into the space, but that's a pretty political world that I've realized now that I'm in this role and I see my counterparts in colleges, right? Like that's something I've never had to deal with in my career, so I don't know how well I would do at it, but it's very. I love Olympic sports, and I love college athletics, and I love what it does for the students and society and who we are, and that would be an interesting thing. So.
Good deal. We got time for one more question here.
Hi, my name is Melissa Briggs with the Health and Safety Council, and I was wondering, as a leader, aside from having mentors and other people speak into your life, are there any particular books or resources that have been helpful in developing yourself as you've continued to climb up the ladder, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't have a list of good books, unfortunately.
Shut Up and Listen by Tillman Fertitta.
Yes, Shut Up, right, exactly. Highly recommend. You should all buy it. We started, it was mentioned in my, so in 2016, there's an organization called Women in Sports and Events. It's a national organization. It was started in New York in the early 90s. There was a woman who was in the industry who had a contract. It was expiring. She had a meeting like the next day with her boss, and she didn't know how to position herself, and she sent out a note to like 15 or 20 colleagues that was like, is anyone available to meet me for a drink? I need to talk through this. And they all showed up. Like everybody showed up to help her. And they were like, hey, we're onto something. So they started meeting regularly. They formed WISE. WISE existed for about 15 years and then started to open up chapters. And we had a woman that had gone to work for the Astros who had been living in a different city and came to Houston, was like, how does Houston not have a WISE chapter? This doesn't make any sense. And this is about the same time I had moved into the chief revenue officer role. So I had moved from just running one vertical of the business to all of the revenue in the organization. And they came and they needed certain sponsors. So we launched WISE. It's been around for 6 or 7 years now. And it has been maybe one of the single best things that has been available to me, because they are other colleagues that are in similar positions. And when you get to a certain point in your career, you can't just go into the person's office next door and complain and ask for help because they work for you now, and that's maybe frowned upon. And so you need, it gets, like they say, it's lonely at the top. Like that is real. And so you need you know, you need a group of people, men, women, friends, colleagues, like they don't even have to be close, but that will pick up the phone and just listen when you're on that brink and can help walk you through and talk you through scenarios when you need to make very important decisions and you need another ear to listen to. And so our WISE network has been probably, at least in the last 6-7 years, I would say arguably the most important group that I've been a part of.
Very good. Big thank you to our guest, Gretchen, and to Vanessa. Thank you all so much.